Ronnie Cowan.
Thank you very much, Sir Christopher, and congratulate my friend and colleague, Member for Stirling, for securing this debate. One of the first areas of improvement I identified for my constituency of Inverclyde when I was first elected in 2015 was broadband speed and resilience. Today, after many discussions, the occasional confrontation and a lot of repetition, Inverclyde is well served. We now enjoy an average download speed of 133.4 megabits per second, with 96.7% super fast availability, and 85.7% are receiving over 30 meg per second. And while these numbers are among the best in the UK, I acknowledge that this is not the experience of everyone in Inverclyde. And if you are my constituent and you are one of those that are still not getting a suitable service, then I accept that you will be frustrated and angered by the service you're getting. Believe me when I say I am working on it. And it's important that I do. We live in an instant society where we've become used to instant access to entertainment, data, food, travel, and a litany of things that once were planned for, looked forward to, and experienced at our leisure. Now we consume at the quickest possible rate, and the thought of having to wait is deemed unacceptable. I may sound like some curmudgeon, but in truth I'm as frustrated as everyone else. During my 35 years of working in IT, I saw a lot of change. The industry was gearing up when I first joined it and was moving at a much faster rate when I left. It now operates at a breakneck speed. Changes to technology are being developed and implemented at a far greater rate of knots than we've ever experienced before. The speeds and volumes of data that we accept as normal were once the things of dreams. We used to squeeze out every last bit of processing power, and then technology ran ahead of us, and it became cheaper, physically smaller, and far more capable. But we were limited by our own imagination regarding what we were going to do with all these new telecoms capabilities. Initially, it was focused on industry and the work environment, and then with the advent of desktop computers, laptops, iPods, gaming, the internet, online shopping, the marketplace for digital inclusion and the requirements therein changed. Back in the day, when governments were connecting households with clean water, it was seen as a duty and a right. It was deemed important that not just the rich had access. Clean drinking water was required to eradicate cholera, and the wider society benefited. The mission was clear, and the fundamentals haven't really changed. Electricity, gas connections over time became more the norm than the exception. But while the vast majority of people enjoyed reliable access, the more rural areas were left behind. They had to become more self-reliant regarding clean water and energy, and that remains true to this day, and that now includes broadband. We can't allow that to continue to happen. The legislation has to take into consideration the provision for areas that are harder to reach and are not economically viable. Currently, the UK Government is estimating 0.3% of properties are too expensive to reach. I accept that running a fibre cable to some very rural areas is not the solution, but alternatives do exist, and the funding of them must be considered. Simply saying it's too hard or too expensive isn't good enough. And when it comes to future-proofing the infrastructure, we must acknowledge that we will never consume less than we currently use. The demand will continue to grow, and the shape and form of our engagement with it will change. The more bandwidth we create, the more uses we will find for it. It is clear to see that we need to be ambitious beyond our current or even projected requirements. Just as we now expect water, sewage and power, we must add connectivity to that list. I would caution my fellow members and those running Project Gigabit and the R100 in Scotland. At some point, we will require a terabyte per second. That's 1,024 gigabits. I can't say at present what for, but with quantum computing and the human imagination, I'm sure that someday somebody will. And we must be designing and building the digital infrastructure that supports that growth. It is the responsibility of the UK Government to manage, fund and coordinate the solution. Otherwise, we shall be standing still while the demand accelerates over the horizon. And finally, Sir Christopher, as always as a Scottish nationalist, I look at situations and ask myself, could Scotland do this better if it were independent? And when I look at the Faroe Islands, with some of the best broadband in the world, along with Norway, I'm inclined to think that we could do better if telecoms was a devolved area. And someday, as a normal, independent nation, we shall get the opportunity to prove that. I just hope it's before we're measuring success in terabytes per second.
I now call the newly appointed Shadow Minister, Chris Brandt.
Thank you, Sir